Good morning to all. Welcome to the second session of FDP. With the kind consent of the convener, we are starting the second session. So our resource person for today is Dr. Meher Prakash. He holds a BTech in Mechanical Engineering from IIT Madras and a PhD in Applied Physics from Caltech, USA. He also holds a doctorate in Computational Biology from ETH, Zurich. Current employment includes he is a faculty fellow at the Bangalore Center for Advanced Scientific Research, and he also owns a startup where he is a founder of VNIR Biotechnologies Private Limited, which started in the year 2017. So, on behalf of the Department of Biotechnology and the Oxford College of Engineering, we take it a privilege to welcome you to this FDP session for being our resource partner. Welcome to the department. So you may kindly start with the session.
Okay. So thank you very much for the invitation, and it's a pleasure. It's a really great pleasure to talk to this audience about my experiences. I'm not here to say anything big other than I was just trying to understand what are the kinds of sessions that went on so far. And as far as I could understand, I see that it's mainly from the support point of view, infrastructure point of view, ecosystem point of view. So in that sense, I thought it may be interesting. Maybe you'll find it boring. It may be interesting to add a story about my personal journey as an entrepreneur. And so this is the story that I'll tell, and you can stop me at any point and give any comments. I may not be able to watch this hand. Anyone can begin speaking in case they would like to say. Let me begin projecting some slides. I'm trying to, just a moment. It's asking me for a permission to share the slides.
So we made you the presenter. You can present it.
I do not see it. Do you see my screen by any chance?
Sir, on near that mic button, you have an up arrow.
That's correct. I do that, and I do not get the. It goes to, let me, I don't know if it helps any way to log out and log in, because initially it said ask for a permission. Let me, just a moment, I'll log out of the session and log in. Just a moment,
Okay,
please.
sir.
I don't know what's happening. I'm not able to press it. Just a moment. I say present and it does not show anything.
Sir, it will, when you press that, it will open. You can give the screen share. And if you have the PPT in the screen, you can open that.
Right, but it's not doing that. It's not doing that. When I press it, it just shows a tray, but it does not really go for any screen presentation. It does not show me the screen mode at all.
Sir, or you can share the desktop screen one.
Let me try again.
Yeah, it's getting shared now, I guess. Sir, try now, sir.
Yeah, I think I'm not permitted to present now. It says only organizers can
Minutes, sir,
present.
I will make you a presenter now. Let us
Please
try.
do. Because instead of the app, I'm trying to, now I'm in the browser mode. Yeah, here it works. I
Sir,
logged in through the browser. Okay, good. So I guess now you see my screen.
yeah, it's getting loaded, sir. Yeah,
Wonderful.
open the, put it on
Wonderful.
slideshow mode, sir.
Okay. So anyway, we can also do without the slides. But so like I said, it's a pleasure to tell my story. This is a story of how I've been an entrepreneur as well as an academician. And so currently my affiliation is in two places, VNIR Biotechnologies, which is the company that I started, as well as the Jawaharlal Nehru Center for Advanced Scientific Research. That's where I'm a faculty fellow. So the story goes back to this specific company is the second company that I started, and this is a company that we started in 2017. And the idea is how do we have a global impact in terms of cellular imaging and disease diagnostics. This is a company that I co-founded with a colleague of mine, Professor Govind Raju. He's a professor of chemistry. And I come from a very mixed background with a background in engineering, background in physics, and some background in product development and so on. So this was an intellectual property that was developed while working in the university where we work. And we started the company about 4 years ago after receiving the right permission from the institute to start this. So, but before this, I have to to tell you the story of how we ended up starting this or what we want to do, I have to go back a little bit to the past. So I was a mechanical engineer. I did my bachelor's in mechanical engineering. So that's where my life started. This is my circle. And somehow things did not feel right in the sense that I was doing well, everything was looking fine. And I somehow felt that there is something that I needed to explore some other subjects which are possibly more interesting and so on. And when the thought, the reason I'm saying this is if someone is happy, if someone really feels perfectly at place where they are, then probably there is no need to start a company. There is no need to do any exploration. If things are looking fine, because exploration takes mental energy. Exploration is challenging. Exploration always puts one at the edge of a limit of one's capabilities. And if someone is very happy where they are, probably there is no need to look or search for anything. But I was not. And so as a mechanical engineer, I was looking for something, and I ended up picking up an affinity for physics, which happens to be the interface. As you see with these Venn diagrams, there is some overlap between the engineering that I was learning and the physics that is possible to learn, and that is thermodynamics. So I started learning thermodynamics when I moved to my PhD program. I initially started working on physics and slowly started picking up affinity for some subjects which were in the boundary between physics and chemistry, which is in what a sense called physical chemistry. And slowly from there, even there, towards the end of my PhD, somehow it was all good. The physical chemistry part was all good, but somehow I wanted to contribute to life sciences. And so this is a desire that started coming out slowly as years went by. And I don't know how many of you went into engineering by your own interest, but I had no understanding of what is engineering or what is life sciences when I began my bachelor's level degree. And so when I started, so as soon as I finished my bachelor's and PhD, slowly I started developing an affinity for life sciences, because they were in a different way to say, they were looking more alive, they were more attractive, at least for me. And I was not sure if I was lost in the path, because at least in the state where I studied, which is Andhra Pradesh, the way it works is when you are about 17, 18, when you finish your plus two, you decide, or even rather, even before that, when you are about 15 and you want to go from 10th standard to plus two, you already see, do you like mathematics, or do you like life sciences? Or alternatively said, There are people who do not like dissection of frogs, and because of which they go to mathematics. There are people who hate mathematics and they go to biology. So either it's driven by love or it's driven by some kind of a hatred. So in either cases, people make a choice. For me, it was not clear why I took it. I mean, it looked like a relatively straightforward path. I took it. But like I said, at the end of my PhD, I started having this desire for contributing to life sciences, something to medicine or something like that. But I did not know what I could do, because I was trained as a mechanical engineer. I was trained in some physics and chemistry. At every step that I was doing this change, these little changes in direction, it was as if there was some calling, something that was looking attractive and asking me to join a new path. At the same time, it was also exploratory and very stressful, because when you go from engineering to physics, you start from zero. You really have to pick up a lot of things to join the stream of physics. From physics, again, when you move to chemistry, again, there is a lot of learning to do. All the learnings that you did probably will be helpful in some way, but there is a lot of relearning that needs to be done, and finally into biology. So this was around the time when I started my postdoctoral work in computational biology, where I was hoping that I could contribute to drug design with some kind of computational models. I worked on it for some time. That was the motivation to begin that program. But within 1 year, once I picked up enough skills, I was not sure if that was contributing really to the goal. So nevertheless, I finished a computational biology program for 3 years, working as a postdoctoral researcher. It was going all well. And that was the time when I met a wonderful person who is now a good friend of mine. And this is a person who comes from Israel. As some of you may have heard, Israel is called the startup nation, because the number of startups per head, per capita, are enormously high in Israel compared to any other place in the world. And so this person coming from Israel was continuously kept saying that we need to start something, and I had no idea what he was trying to say. So we spent about a year together, and trying to figure out what is it that we could do together and what is it that has a market value. And this was the first time out thinking out of academia, because I was very happy in the research environment. You work at your pace, you interact with your supervisor, but nothing more than that. You don't have to worry anything more, because rest of it is all taken care. And slowly we started worrying about what is a startup that we can do. So that was the conception of a company called Metaplastics that I co-founded with this friend of from Israel. And so the company was supposed to, many questions came up. Firstly, we were two people. So we had to do something that was financially attractive, technologically important, as well as something that we could handle on a scale that we can imagine. So since we were only two people working on the project, first we had to develop a technology, and somehow we ran into this technology hearing here from some people that rusting of metals is a problem, and there is a volatile phase protection that one can give. So just like we use Vicks vapor rub or something. So how do you give a vapor phase protection for metals, not by applying oil or something? That was the question that we were trying to ask. And we did see that there was a lot of market for it, especially if we move towards safer chemicals. There were some chemicals which were being used, and they're not really the safest chemicals. They were starting from 2005 or something, they have been marked as carcinogens, and we had to find a replacement for them. So we had to go down the literature, scientific literature, do some exploration, and within 6 months we had a product which was safe according to the standards that people had by that time, and it was working. Then the question was, do we need a lot of resources? Because starting a company means that you need a lot of resources, at least that's how it looks. So the way, since we had a technology of our own, then what we could do was, we were working with a high value product. So which means that the margin that we could expect on our product was at least 60 to 70% of the sale value. So even if we lost 10-20% by giving the work as a third party work, as an outsource work to some other company, we saw that we had enough margin for ourselves, enough profit for ourselves. So we started this company. But before we started it, we had to go down the next path, which is what is it that is there a market for this product? So all this was happening while we both were working in the university as researchers in the daytime, which is 9 to 6 or at least maybe even 7. We would work in the university as researchers, go back in the evening 7:30, and from 8 o'clock until 2 or 3 in the night, we were trying to do a lot of work on collecting the market information. And at that time I was living in Switzerland, and so we were trying to phase out with the different time zones. We were trying to see, is there a market in United States, is there a market in India? So because of the time zone differences also, we could even do marketing exercises late in the night, because we were really looking for a global market. And kept on calling many people, and it looked like it was a lot of attractive market for us. And once it looked like a full-time attention was required for that, when about a year of efforts went in, and it was clear that at least full-time effort was required, we started the company. And for that company, it was a 2-people company. I was a CEO, which, as you know, it's called Chief Executive Officer. But in reality, when it's a 2-person company, it's called a Chief Everything Officer, which means I was responsible for thinking of finances, which sounds attractive. I was responsible for thinking of marketing, which sounds attractive. But I was also responsible for putting a postage stamp, sending it, cleaning the floor if something went wrong, and so on, and also going to the factory floor. So although I was an engineering student when I was studying my bachelor's, I realized that when I started this company and started going to the factory floors, I was working with the field workers, the technicians, the diploma holders who work in the factory to get the things done, to process plastic into different things and so on. That was the time I really picked up quite a lot of engineering, because of all the technically skilled people that I was working with. So 2 things I picked up at that time. One was the local language, because the technicians usually speak the local language. And second was the technical skills and an appreciation for engineering, which I had lost in this path. As you see, I was drifting away from engineering, but finally, when I started company, I started realizing the value of engineering, how to get things done the way you would like to get them done. So that was an attractive part. It was looking like I said, we were researchers during daytime and going sleepless trying to market in the night. And when it looked like all was attractive, that we could pay someone and get our work done with the technology, which was our secret. And we could not push the boundaries anymore. At one point, I had to quit my life as a researcher. It was a very tough decision, because I was not sure leaving research at that point I would ever go back or not, especially from a university environment. I was not sure if I would, what is the future of this company, but it was a very risky decision. I took the advice of many people, and you find different kinds of people. Some people, at least in among the circles that I grew up, many people were reluctant to risk, because they want a nice, happy, comfortable job and everything. There are some people who wanted to eventually start a company, at least that's what they claim. They never did in the last 10 years, but they had this vicarious pleasure of starting a company. They encouraged me the most, saying that, look, this is the time to do it. And in the end, I jumped into this company and started the company. And like I said, I was the Chief Everything Officer for this company. It looked very attractive. So for a few months, I was earning a lot of money. In fact, so much money that it looked like after 2 or 3 years of work, I may even be able to retire. But then came the financial crisis. These are the risks that you sometimes do not expect. For example, like the COVID right now, no one would have expected it 2 years ago or 1.5 years ago. So, so there was a European crisis at that time, and that meltdown really resulted in a loss of business for my customers, which eventually led to a loss of business for me as well. So I tried to grow the company. There was a time when investors were showing interest in investing, but I postponed the investment decision, saying that, look, in a few months we'll have a better sales, and with a better kind of a market valuation, I'll be able to come back to this. But then a meltdown happened. The investors probably lost some of their money. I lost my customers. I was desperate for money now, and the investors also were not so free with their money. So no matter how many doors I knocked at, it was not working out. And after 2 years of trying to push it like that, I decided that that was not working out, and I had to honorably quit from that position. So then it was time to close the activities of the company and try to come back to another option. And then I did the other thing that I knew, which is going back to university. So I started looking for other options to go back as a researcher. And this time I worked with some medical doctors that which comes in the overlap of different fields. That's the circle that I show here. So here are a few things that those of you who do not know what's a startup, these are a few things that I would like to underscore here. Firstly, it's like a bike ride. It's a startup is a really wonderful journey. It's not for everyone. There must be a real joy. There must be a real thrill in seeking it. Either someone is made for it or someone is not made for it, because it brings a lot of stress, and that stress of course comes with the prospect that it can grow into a lot of wonderful things, but you never know. So some have an appetite for it, some do not. Also, people who invest, so this I say for all three classes of people. People who start companies, either they have that in them or they don't have it in them. Second, people who invest in startups also are the same category. Some people do not believe in investing in startups. Some people really believe in investing in startups, because once investing in a startup can be like investing on whitewashing a wall. You never know when it will come back or if it will ever come back. On the other hand, if they invest in a stock market or something, if the market is going through a downturn, the next day they sell it for a small loss and they make their money. Whereas the money invested in a startup may not be recovered at all. So, and the third class of people who also are either made for startup or not made for startup, or the employees. So also to be a part of a startup, even as an employee, is also a challenge and a risk by its own. And not everyone can handle it, because some people would like to have a well-defined job, well-defined cutout job that goes from 9 to 5 or something. But a startup requires one to be very versatile and requires one to be very open in terms of learning skills on an everyday basis. And as an employee, it's really important to be having this kind of a flexibility if they want to be part of a startup. So the reason I'm saying this is, if someone is interested in the startup journey, they can participate in all these three aspects. It may be that they start a startup company, or they invest in it, or they actually just become part of it as employees. Each of it is nevertheless a contribution into this journey. But what makes something a startup? We hear this name everywhere. So in reality, let's say that there is a pawn shop. There is a guy who sells tea outside the building, or there is a doctor. So which one of these can be called a startup? Maybe initially I would like to say that maybe the pawn shop is not a startup, because it does not have some kind of a technical skill. But does that make a doctor startup? A doctor who does their private practice because they got a lot of technical education? In reality, neither may be classified as a startup based on the technical skills. So the interesting things about startup is something that starts small, which all of us know, but in principle, it can scale up into something really big. So once we know how to do it in one place, one city, one market, we should be able to scale it up and reproduce exactly the same system in other places. If it is an app, it should be available for download on all kinds of platforms. If it is a service, it should be available for different regions of the state or country, whatever it is. So the scalability is what makes it a startup. It may be that there is a technology behind it, but that's not the essential part of it. A doctor, if someone, a doctor who is technically extremely skilled and is doing a great service for humanity, but if they are thinking of doing only their work, then they are more like self-employed. That's what you see here, or a small business, but they are not thinking of a scale up. So whereas when things require a lot of capital, they can be, of course, large corporates and things like large manufacturing, or even things like laying of roads or something like that, they require a lot of capital, but at the same time they do not have the uniqueness. So the journey that one takes is ideally in this journey, which is startup is something which starts high in uniqueness and is scalable in terms of having the impact as well as raising the capital, so that it becomes a large corporate at some point. That's what makes it a startup, compared to something that that starts small and remains small, which is more of a self-employment and a small business. So the reason I'm saying this is because when someone goes for an investment, when someone tries to hire an employee, or when someone tries to quit a job to start a company, the one question they have to ask is, are they quitting it because they're just not able to put up with their boss, or do they have really an idea that in principle can scale up into a large thing? Of course, it may not happen, because the success of a startup typically is anywhere in the world. They say that the chance of success of a startup is about 10%, not more than that. So it's a very high risk journey that one takes, but it's something that the potential scalability is what makes it be defined as a startup. And it's a wonderful journey for those who are made for it. So my learnings from the startup after I started and failed in the first company was the dreams and realities. So the dream is, of course, to start and build customers slowly. But luckily at that time, the reality for me was that I had customers almost immediately. Scalable across countries is the dream of any startup, like I was just saying. And it really looked like the potential that I could scale up this business across different places. Then the dream is that to be rich, because what is the use of having this potential impact of everyone? Eventually it must come reflect as some kind of a generation of wealth for you, for those who believe in you, and so on. That looked like an initial promise, but in the end, I ended up losing all the savings that I had from my Swiss research salary at that point. And my dream was that I would accept investment at a time when things are looking so successful that every investor would find it attractive to invest. But unfortunately, like I said, not because of my technology, not because of my customers, but a tertiary factor, which is the market itself, the entire European market was collapsing, and that's the reason that they never came. So these were the lessons that I learned, that there is a difference between the dream and reality. And if now as in the company that I am doing right now, we are trying to be a bit careful from these lessons that we learned, and so on. So once the company failed, like I said, I did not know what to do. I had to go back to the thing that I knew. And I was trying to go back to working in an interface between biology and medicine, working with medical doctors, doing some research. And then eventually from there, I joined my Jawaharlal Nehru Center, where I'm the faculty fellow. This is the center here, where after seeing all of these, finally I could define my own interaction, my own overlap, because the reason I was unhappy with many of these was that the kind of research I was doing, the kind of studies I was doing, none of them were very uniquely cut out for me. But based on my own personal experiences, I could finally start exploring it and defining new research areas where many interesting disciplines, very interdisciplinary projects could be done. So that's where I started. But after I started, and as they say it, once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur, because like the motorbike ride thing, people, once they start developing a taste for it, unfortunately, it continues with them for a lifetime. And that's what happened. But this happened in a different way. I started working in the university, and I was supposed to be, this is the map of the campus where I work. And so I was supposed to be sitting here where the star is, that because that's where my department is. Instead, I was initially assigned an office space around this red block here 19, where my colleague Govindraju, who is now my partner, was sitting. And the reason I was, for various administrative reasons, I could not find a space which was, the office space was getting renovated, and I had to sit here in this space. And I would run into this gentleman every day, and we would talk on a daily basis. And that story went on for at least 6 months. and he was having many wonderful inventions that I was seeing. It was about, in those days, it was about detecting mercury poison in water. He was coming in news and so on. So I asked him, look, mercury poisoning, all of us know, is something that people care about in food materials. And I was asking, is there a way we can develop it into a product? So that's where the story started, my second journey into entrepreneurship. And slowly we started discussing on a daily basis. And it took us, again, 6 months to convince ourselves that we had an interesting business case that we can translate. It's called translation. We can translate whatever we learned in the university, whatever the research findings he was making, into a company. And so this was in around mid of 2015. But from the time to start a company, it took us another 1 or 2 years, roughly, 2017. And like I said, the moment of inspiration was that there was these ultra-sensitive mercury sensors, which were extremely sensitive compared to anything else in the market. And somehow there was an overlap of interest. There was something very different about us because he's a chemist and trained as a physicist and engineer, but there was also some overlapping language, which was what made us come together. And as you will realize, whether I don't know I will be able to convince you enough or not, but remember this, it's always there, one person is never enough to start a company or to grow something, because you always need a partner, you always need someone to discuss with, to grow, who can challenge your ideas, who can complement your thoughts, and who you can work with. And it was a wonderful partnership that we had. And what happens is, while I emphasize the importance of a partner, one should also remember that usually many businesses also collapse because there is no partner, or the two partners do not get along well. So in fact, among the failures of the startup, a big part of it can be actually accounted for disagreements between the two partners. And I'm today very happy that I don't know what will happen to our company right now, but it's been almost 6 years, and till today we have a very strong partnership, and it's a journey that we are enjoying together, exploring and struggling together. So we asked for starting the company, and we did get a permission about 1 year from then, because its university has its own procedure about how to give the IP to a startup company. And we got this permission, and so then we started the company. Then here is a checklist for those who want to start a company. Typically, the kinds of things that we hear are, look, I like to eat food, so I would like to start a restaurant. No, if I like to eat food, maybe I should just go ahead and eat in different restaurants, sample, not start a restaurant. Similarly, the other story that we hear is, for example, a few years ago, I think 2-3 years ago, even Anand Mahindra was saying that he would give 50 lakhs to any team who could build a product product which looks similar to Facebook. But the reality is, Facebook is not just a website or a mobile app. Right now, it has developed into a giant with the kind of network it has, with the kind of user base it has. So we can't replicate the success of Facebook by just looking at the app that they have. So we must differentiate the technology from the market reach they already have. Similarly, we must also know whether we are a consumer or a producer. If I like I said, if I like eating food, maybe I should just go eat food in different places, not start a restaurant or not start a mobile app for like Swiggy or Zomato. So what is it that is, what are the things that I have to check before to see whether I have the right material to start the company or not? So firstly, this is what I call the 10x principle. Everything should be many, many times better than what is in the market. So that's the first thing, because if there is something that's being sold for 100 rupees in the market, or let's say a Coca-Cola drink or something, you see that Coca-Cola is being sold for 10 rupees in the market, and somehow you run into some combination of different food additives at home, and it begins to taste like that or better. And we begin to think that, but these are ingredients I can make for 9 rupees, then very likely it will not be a success, because the reason when it's being sold for 10 rupees, there is a lot of a value chain which includes the distribution, which includes the manufacturing cost, which includes the advertising cost, which includes the branding cost, which creates the impact, and so on. So all of these put together really adds up to the cost, and we cannot see it as just the marketing price. The reason I'm saying this is because once someone starts a company, slowly many costs start adding up. I have to file taxes as a company. I have to file taxes at the end of the year, so I have to take help of accounting. I have to incubate this place somewhere. I'm sure you heard about a few lectures about incubation opportunities. They're all highly subsidized from the government, extremely supportive. You can reduce a lot of your capital costs, but still you have to pay a cost for that. You have to pay a cost for employees. Sometimes you make something, but it's not sold. So whether it's an app or whether it's a physical product, this is always the case, which means it will stay as an inventory that is unsold. So all of these have to be accounted for, and the only way there is a chance of success is your pricing is at least 10 times cheaper than what you see. This is what I'm talking about. So second thing is value proposition. Similarly, if you say that there is something, I do not know what it is, but let's say there is some detection kit, a diagnosis kit, or if someone develops an app to for a face recognition, whatever. I cannot say that I'm 2% better or 3% better, because to switch from that, from an existing existing service or existing product, there is a huge cost, and people do not switch easily. And which means that to even look at my product, my service that I'm offering, people really, whatever I'm offering has to be much better, not slightly better. And this is another thing that one has to take into account. A slightly better product really, as a startup, is really hard to push into the market, because it does not catch the attention of people. As a small player with relatively low capital, we cannot really get the attention of the people, that whether it's normal people or whether it's a B2B that we sell to other business, it's hard to get attention. Then similarly, this is another interesting thing, the time scale also should be order of magnitude. You must be prepared for something, because what we say weeks becomes months, what we say what we think takes a few months becomes a few years. So whatever cost, whatever resources, financial resources we are planning for, if I think that the product will be ready, if my app will be ready, if my technology will be ready in 6 months, then maybe I should plan for at least 3 years of that, in terms of having the financial resources. Because what is supposed to take a day will take a week, what is supposed to take a week will take a month, and what's supposed to take a few months will take years, and this cannot be underestimated. Similarly, this other 10x principle that I would like you to pay attention to is the sales funnel, because you talk to 100 people. When I first started the company, I was completely ignorant, and I was asking a few friends, but what happens when you go for sale, when you go to try to sell it to someone? Are they rude to you, or do they mean disrespect to you? He said, no, actually they make you sit down, they even give you a coffee and tea and talk to you nicely. These are what you call leads. They talk to you nicely, you call them, they answer the phone, you go to them, they give you a coffee, but it means nothing, because none of them have interest. They're being polite, but it does not translate into business interest. Out of every 100 people you talk to, whatever it may be, there will be 10 people that will be interested. And out of these 10 people that are interested, finally one of them will download the product app, or buy the product. Even if it's a free app, this is the same thing. We may think that if it's free, this conversion will be better. In reality, it's the same, whether it's a free product or a sale. People just do not do it, because of the people who talk these are the people who talk nicely. These are the people, I'm not even including the people who don't even answer the call. These are the people who talk nicely. These are the people who are really interested, and this is the real value. And then if you add people who don't even answer your calls, don't even look at you, that will be even bigger number somewhere here. Similarly, also in terms of product acceptance, not everything that we have may be accepted by the market. I mean, it depends upon the specific technology, specific business. Some may be able to have multiple products. For some it may not be possible, or maybe it may be multiple features. But out of the multiple features or products that we are designing, the market only adopts a small fraction of it. So I went through this checklist with when we realized that we had some technologically interesting products. I went through this checklist to see does it match all of these conditions, and it looked like we had a good chance. And we started this company to do what is called molecular probes. So these are when we say that, for example, right now with COVID, all of us are familiar with PCR test. And the PCR test essentially means that there is we are detecting that there is a presence of virus. And to detect that there is a virus, there is a lot of engineering, there is a lot of equipment. Essentially, the readout is a fluorescence. There is a bright signal that comes out of the sample, and that bright signal indicates the level of viral load that is inside this sample. And that comes from what is called a fluorescence probe. And our company specializes in fluorescence probes, which detect multiple things. They detect pH. Some of them detect the DNA. Some other probes detect some proteins, and so on and so on. So these are all the different scope we wrote down. Like I said, that there are multiple products. If you have the market may adopt some of them with the same things that we have. We were trying to design what are called the products for it. And so this is another education that I would like to go through, which is technology is different from product, because technology is something which essentially has a scientific advantage and can be materialized in practical application. But then comes the thing which is called the product, which is it must be customized to the special taste of this individual person. For example, these are the different examples of pasta. Each one of them has a different name. This is a helix, this is a cylinder, this is a long cylinder, this is a coil, and all that. But in the end, all of them come with the same maida flour, and all of them are exactly the same. The shapes are different, but each one of them is believed to be a different product. Similarly, a chocolate bar which is 5 rupees small size is different from a chocolate bar which is 10 rupees, which is a different product, because there are people who would only like to pay so much money, or they don't want to eat a bigger piece, or there are people who would like to have a bigger bite of it. Similarly, also another examples of product is if you ever go through a supermarket rack, you'll find a lot of wonderful products. A lot of wonderful products which are going to be for masala, for example, chana masala, dal masala, all these kinds of things. And the reality is, although they are all named differently, all of them come back to the same thing, which is they're roughly 90% they're similar, but they're customized to individual requirements. So essentially the products are starting from the technology, but starting from application and filling up the gap. One has to, using the science and technology, one has to develop products which are what are called idiot proof, which means no matter who tries it, it has to work in their hands. And we could, so because maybe in our laboratory, a very smart, technically skilled person is working, but it need not be. People do not follow all the things that you specify in the product usage sheet. So it should nevertheless work, and we could design a lot of products from the technology that we had. So from there, we had to do something called an incubation. So which is how do we start a company? Then the next question was, how do we start a company? And this goes back to having, so first is what do we call it? Initially, when we were trying to think of it, what was going on was that me and my colleague Govindraju, each were referring to it as, I would call it his company, and he would say, but oh no, but you are also part of the company. And every day we would lose 10 minutes figuring out whose company it is, and finally we would agree that it's company of both of us. So at some point we realized that it's meaningless to go through this discussion every day. The product itself requires a name. The project itself requires a name, which may eventually become the name of the company. So we started with the idea that we will call it VNIR Biotechnologies, but because of Ministry of Commerce and so on, MCA, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, finally we got a name. They called VNIR Biotechnologies because they eliminated all the other names that we suggested. And then where do we do it? Because the reality is, as a startup, when we begin, we don't even know how the project grows and so on. So in that sense, it's really meaningless to start renting a place with a 5-year lease, start buying equipment, start buying a lot of computer servers and so on. So now if it's someone developing apps or something with things like AWS servers, things have become very easy. You just have to rent the space exactly what you require. If someone is working on technologies like biotechnologies, for example, in Bangalore, these are two examples of incubation centers, and there are many others coming up as well. And so these are the places where you can start the company without really investing a lot on the equipment, like including tables, desks, to some of the technical equipment. Imagine going to an investor, which could even be early investor, could even be your friends or family, and telling them that, look, you give me 50 lakhs or 1 crore, I'll spend 10 lakhs of it on buying furniture, another 5 lakhs of it on fixing fans and lights and so on. And they will be shocked that they do not see a value for their money. Whereas when you are with an incubation facility, they actually see a value for their money, because you're not investing on or rather you're minimizing the capital costs. Whatever money goes in is going straight for the development of the product and for taking it to technology. So for us, for our case, who are required? Of course, we require many people from different backgrounds: chemists, biologists, and marketing, because that's also, we have to start collecting the market information in reality early enough. In fact, usually we have this opinion that we develop the product for 1 or 2 years and then we start talking to the market. But usually by the time we go to the market will say that they are looking for something else. So marketing is not something that you do as an afterthought, but it must be integrated into the development from the beginning. And one always needs a lot of advisors, because the people who have done it and who are not influenced by the day-to-day ups and downs should be there always to advise. And you need those advisors as well. And how much money? Like I said, in the 10x rule, the money is of course always more than what you require. Time is always more than required. But what keeps people going is because, in principle, if it all works out, the possibilities are also many-fold than what we can imagine. And our product portfolio really multiplied multiple times from the time we started thinking what we could do. We were generously supported from different government grants. We took what are called non-dilutive grants, and we got money from a lot of angel investors, and that's what kept us going forward. If someone is interested, I can describe this, how to do this business plan and all that. But we started from science. From there, we went into a startup where we were trying to find what is the real match with the market. What is it that we can do so that the market will adopt us? We have found those matches in terms of diagnostic kits and so on. Now it's time for us to go into the revenue phase, where hopefully if the same college invites me next year, I would like to take this picture with a lot of money in my hand and show it to you. So like I said, the vision is what is important, that there must be a scalable idea, that whatever you do across one field, it must be scalable across different applications, across scaled impact, which is maybe someone you diagnose a disease in some person, but the person who is taking care of them, the society overall also benefits from it. So that's the scaled impact. And what you're doing in Bangalore, the same product can be sold in other places. So all these scaling aspects. So like I said, for a startup, can it be scaled is the question that anyone will ask. And we have been finding that what we have started on is a very scalable model. And this is the summary. So you start with the technology, you find a partner, you build a team, and you build a coherent team which you can actually get along. Even when times are not really in favor, many times you can get along and discuss and keep going forward. And if the market really wants completely different product, you have to change the strategy a little bit. That's called pivoting, and finally go towards earning the revenues. So that's roughly my journey so far. It's been a wonderful journey, and I had to go back and forth between being in the university and running a startup, and now I'm trying to do both of the things simultaneously. And I count on the wonderful team that we have built, because in the end it comes back to the right team that you have, and they become the greatest asset at some point, because in some sense they have also taken a risk to join a small company, and they also believe in your vision and so on. So that's my story. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir, for sharing that valuable information about your journey in the startups.
Yes, please. It's my pleasure.
Participant called Sangeeta, she is asking if you could share your contact details, please.
Sure, I can type it in this chat box itself. I have typed my email address. Any other questions?
Any queries and questions, participants, you can unmute yourselves. I think those were the questions, sir.
No problem. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have participated in this meeting. I have in the chat box, I have typed both my email address and my phone number. Anyone is welcome to reach me out anytime, because sometimes some of these advisors that they may seek, or their students, I understand that some of the participants are professors whose students may in the future want to start a company or something like that. And it will be, they can reach out to me anytime. And if it's a phone call and I don't answer, I request you to leave an SMS so that I can get back to you as soon as I can.
827777 53351.
Perfect.
MEHER K Prakash.
That's
K
correct.
Prakash.
Meher K. Prakash. That's correct.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Sir, on behalf of the staff, students, and Department of Biotechnology, I thank you for sparing your time and being part of this FDP program. Thanks a lot, sir, for being part of this FDP program. Looking forward for some more collaborations with you. Thank you, sir.